welcome to our next video. Today we're going to be doing the models of memory. So we'll kick off with the multi-store model.
I'm Will, by the way.
And I'm Sarah.
Hello. Right, multi-store model. Now, external information from the environment first enters the sensory memory, where it's stored very briefly before decaying or being passed to the SDM. If it's sound-based, it enters an echoic memory, echo, da-da-da. If it's visual, it enters the iconic memory in the sensory memory. Then, if you either forget it, or if you pay attention, it's put into the
short-term memory.
Yay! Where it's stored via an acoustic code. We've done this in the last video. Capacity 7 plus or minus 2 chunks. It can be lost easily because it can be pushed out by new information. This is displacement. But if you rehearse it, then it can go into the long-term memory, where it's stored semantically with meaning. It can remain there for a lifetime, or you could lose it because of forgetting. There we are. Sorry, I just hit you in the face. Right. Okay, supporting evidence for the multi-store model.
Free recall experiments.
Yay, that was very quiet.
It was.
Right. Participants are given a list of words, 20, to remember and asked to recall them in any order. Recall them in any order. The results fall into a pattern known as a serial position curve, which is like the little curve. You have three different effects, basically. The primacy effect, where they remember the first words because they've rehearsed them and put them in the LTM. The asymptote, which is the bit at the bottom which is remembered poorly because it's in the middle, because it's not quite rehearsed into the LTM, it's not in the SDM. And then recency effect. Thank you, where the participants recall the last items on the list because they've been put in the short-term memory. This suggests existence of two stores of memory, the long-term and the short-term. Further evidence is that you can manipulate these independently. Slower rates of presentation improve the primacy effect but have no effect on the recency. And recency effect disappears if the last words are not recalled straight away, so by having an interference task. So there we are. That's some good evidence. The next supporting evidence is from
studies of brain damage patients.
Now, HM. One dude called HM had a normal SDM but greatly impaired LTM, and KF had a greatly impaired digit span, that's SDM, but not an impaired LTM. And yes, that's all you need to know about HM and KF. So, yes, remember that. That's always good. Criticisms of the multi-store model are thus.
It's too simple.
Yes, it doesn't take into account factors such as strategies people employ to remember things. Also, it doesn't explain why some things are remembered and others are forgotten. It maybe categorising words in their meaning means they're remembered more. For example, it's a nice little example. Also, rehearsal is not the only way info is passed to the LTM. We don't repeat everything we see. That goes into our memory. Like, if we see an event or something, we don't tend to repeat it. We just kind of remember it or something like that. So the type of processing we do affects our memory, which is always good. Information
must also flow in both directions.
It must do. For you get things from your LTM and use it in your SDM. For example, memory improvement techniques. You think of how to learn something, which is the skill is in your long-term memory, but then you use it in the short-term memory. Again, with hitting you in the face, I'm very sorry. Right. Also, brain damage patients support the model, but the model does not explain how information is passed to the LTM without being affected by the impaired SDM in the case of KF, because his LTM's fine, but his SDM, according to the multi-store model, it's got to go through the SDM, and that doesn't make any sense. And HM's capable of learning new skills, which suggests that the LTM is not just one store.
He can mirror draw.
Yes, he can mirror draw, which is always good. Others argue that more than one type of LTM, there is more than one type of LTM, a distinction between memory for skills and memory for events and facts. For example, you can ride a bike, but you can't remember facts. Like if you have a memory condition, then you can still ride a bike, but you can't remember what you did last Tuesday. Right, don't know why I went a bit Yorkshire. So, and that's it really. That's all we need to know. Now, the working memory, which is always lovely. We love the working memory, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
We do. 3 parts. What are they?
Central executive,
which is controls the activity, directs the attention to the most important information. Limited capacity, therefore you cannot attend to many things at once.
Second one is phonological loop.
This is an auditory store which rehearses the sound-based information. It consists of two parts.
Phonological store and the articulatory loop.
The phonological store deals with the perception of sound, known as the inner ear, and the articulatory loop is known as the inner voice and is the verbal rehearsal system, which prevents decay by repeating or looping. See what I did there? Words. All we have to remember is that articulatory loop, inner voice, rehearsal, phonological store, perception of sound, inner ear, and the phonological loop is the whole thing together, which is the store which rehearses the info, and it's And the last part is
Visuospatial sketchpad.
or the inner eye, which provides some sort of mental map. Like if you do mental arithmetic, you play it out in your mind and you draw it, or if you imagine such things. Strengths and weaknesses, both of this. Strengths is that the visuospatial sketchpad thing and phonological loop, there's evidence using dual task performance. For example, they were given two tasks, two statements A and B. The participants were then given a screen with statement B followed by statement A, or statement A followed by statement B. Bear with me, this does get a bit simpler. Participants were then required to state whether the order was true or false as quickly as possible. This occupies the central executive, see, because it, did that make any sense to you?
Yep.
Right, good. Task 2. This could be one of 3 different tasks. Participants were required to repeat the over and over again. This occupies the articulatory loop. The second little mini task, participants was asked to say random digits out loud.
95.
This occupies both the articulatory loop and the central executive. And the third little task, participants were not required to complete the second task. Right, so they've got to have statement A and statement B, and then say which one was, whether it was true or false. So it's really complicated, but that's because it sounds complicated. Like A, B, and then does A follow B?
Yes.
No.
I didn't hear what you said.
Right, but that's generally what it is. And that's good. And then you had a distraction task, which are the second 3 tasks. So the results showed that when task 1 was combined with version A or C, that's the or no second task, then the performance on task 1 was not affected. That's the saying which one becomes before the other. But when combined version B, which is saying random digits out loud, the speed drops significantly. This shows that doing 2 tasks that use the same component of memory causes difficulty. I advise, because that is really complicated, that we can't really explain it, and you should just look that up. Support from brain damaged patients who have impaired verbal skills but intact spatial ones. Also, another little strength is that different parts of the working memory model use different parts of the brain, showing that they're separate systems. For example, you might use your visuospatial sketchpad to mentally picture your route from your house to town, which is always good. And that could be shown on like brain scans and stuff, brain imaging. Also, the role of the phonological loop in rehearsal has been supported with the word length effect. This is the tendency to immediately recall short words better than long words, because the articulatory loop has a limited time capacity, which we think is 2 seconds, but no one really knows. The number of short words remembered would not be greater than long words, which is... Don't know if that last sentence made any sense, but think it through.
Weaknesses.
We do love weaknesses. There is little experimental support for the central executive. It's said to have a limited capacity, but the actual capacity is not known because it's a subconscious thing. There are individual differences in abilities in reading and spelling, so it's not clear why these occur. But you can elaborate on that probably. And also it's not clear how the communication is managed between LTM and SDM, because this really only sort of explains the short-term memory, and so it doesn't explain the long-term memory. But the weaknesses are a bit vague, and so you probably need to bring in the strength as well. Thank you very much for listening. Sarah, please finish this. My voice is about to die.
Yeah, thank you very much for listening, and well, please listen to our next video. Yeah. Which will be eyewitness testimony?
Yes.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.